Welcome to this episode of Horrific History and Hauntings. I'm Beth.
And I'm Ramy. We're your hosts, here to talk about the stories that the history books ignore.
From horrific epidemics and ghostly hauntings to the catastrophes and tragic events that have sickened humanity.
I know what we're talking about today. It's the rest of Amityville Horror, but is there a thing in history that happened?
We have one. October 13th is the day that we are recording. On October 13th, 2010, the last of 33 miners who were trapped for over 2 months in a collapsed Chilean mine were successfully rescued.
I have thought about those miners every few episodes of my Bim Bam that come out because Justin always talks about, like the Chilean miners rising from the depths, we are back.
Oh.
Every few weeks I'll think about those Chilean miners.
This marked the longest underground survival in history. On August 5th, a cave-in at the San Jose mine, which was located 500 miles north of Santiago, left the miners stranded about half a mile underground with only a few days' worth of food. For 17 days, with supplies running low and no contact with the outside world, the miners eventually began considering suicide and cannibalism, as one does. On August 22nd, a drill finally broke through, allowing them to send a note to the surface. I don't think any of them died, actually.
Good.
I could be wrong,
I
but
bet they
I
got
don't
hot.
think they did. Yeah. The note said, "We are fine in the refuge, the 33. Supplies and communication followed, and the men were seen through video cameras in the hot and cramped shelter. A team of experts come up with a plan to rescue the miners by drilling a shaft wide enough to get them out. On October 12th, the first miner was pulled to safety in a 13-foot capsule. The entire rescue took less than 24 hours, with each miner making the 2,000-foot trip in around 15 minutes. All 33 miners, ranging from ages 19 to 63, were rescued and in decent health. They were later honored with trips to places like Disney World, where they were celebrated with a parade."
That's cool.
Yeah, and that's all for today in history. Now we're going into the trial of Ronald DeFeo Jr. In the first part of this episode, we mentioned how he killed all of his family,
And he was fond of heroin.
among other drugs, and robbed his grandfather's Buick dealership, I believe.
You kiss my Nash, you son of a Buick.
On October 14th, 1975, the trial began. Ronald DeFeo Jr. stood accused of the brutal slaying of his entire family.
Except for the grandparents.
Yes. In the lead up to the trial, prosecutor Gerald Sullivan had the task of unraveling the web of lies Ronald Butch DeFeo spun.
Or there was quite a few. They were
Yes.
extensive and all over the place.
Yes, he knew that he was dealing with a pathological liar. DeFeo's defense attorney, William Weber, planned to use DeFeo's history of substance abuse and erratic behavior before the murders to build an insanity defense.
It seems plausible.
I believe that you actually can do that.
He also seemed very stupid, though.
Yeah. Sullivan was determined to expose DeFeo as the cold-blooded and violent killer he believed him to be. In his opening statement, Sullivan urged the jury to focus on the facts and leave no room for excuses for DeFeo's actions, meaning it doesn't matter if he was on drugs or what his mental state was. He still killed his whole family. It was 2 sisters, 2 brothers, and both of his parents. Weber had attempted to have the case dismissed by claiming that Butch's confession was obtained under stress and that he had been denied access to counsel during it. However, the judge rejected these claims. This left Weber to defend his client on the grounds of legal insanity at the time of the murders. Sullivan knew that simply arguing against DeFeo's insanity wasn't enough. He had to paint a picture of a man capable of such a heinous crime that he was capable of killing 6 of his own family members. To achieve this, he called upon witnesses including police officers and detectives that were involved in the case, and Butch's relatives that he didn't shoot, not slash. Their testimonies helped, but it was DeFeo's own words that proved the most damning. Weber called Butch to the stand in an attempt to guide his client's responses to support the insanity plea. However, DeFeo failed to recognize photos of his own mother, and then he admitted to killing his family, but he claimed it was self-defense. They were asleep.
You won't believe
I had to kill them.
In their beds. It was a psychic assault.
Despite this, the district attorney pressed on by asking Butch to explain why. His response stated that he believed his family intended to kill him and his actions were merely self-defense. He also proclaimed that with the gun in his hand, he knew he was God. Sullivan feared that DeFeo's testimony and delusional claims might sway the jury towards believing the insanity defense, so he tried to expose the inconsistencies in his story. He highlighted his inability to recognize his own own mother's photo, the contradictions between his courtroom testimony and the confession he gave to the police. Sullivan's questioning aimed to reveal any twisted satisfaction he might have gotten from the murders. DeFeo admitted to feeling a sense of satisfaction after the murders. Sullivan's tactics enraged DeFeo to the point he dramatically began bursting out threats on the prosecutor's life in the courtroom.
Of course.
Not a bright move. Psychiatrist Dr. Schwartz, who diagnosed Butch with psychosis, dissociation, and criminal insanity, was brought to the stand. Sullivan challenged his diagnosis by mentioning DeFeo's deliberate actions in removing evidence from the crime scene, which he suggested this was because he was aware that what he did was wrong, which I agree with. When pressed by Sullivan, Dr. Schwartz revealed that DeFeo actually admitted to not wanting to leave clues for the police because he was not a friend of the cops and didn't want to help them.
Not because I murdered a bunch of folk.
Dr. Harold Zolan took the stand for the prosecution. Zolan offered a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder. And this, he explained, wasn't a form of insanity, but a type of personality trait, and that people with this disorder were fully aware of their actions and knew right from wrong, but were driven by a sense of entitlement and disregard for others. As Zolan stepped down, Sullivan felt confident that the prosecution had been able to present the evidence they needed to prove Butch DeFeo was capable of the murders. On November 19th, 1975, the judge sent the jury to decide the fate of Ronald DeFeo Jr. Their initial vote was 10-2, which 2 jurors were unconvinced of DeFeo's insanity during the time of the crimes.
Unconvinced of their sanity or insanity?
Sanity.
Okay.
After carefully reviewing the transcripts of DeFeo's testimony, the 2 holdout jurors were swayed, and the final vote came back as a unanimous 12-0 guilty verdict. On November 21st, 1975, Ronald DeFeo Jr. was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder. 2 weeks later, he received the maximum sentence of 25 years to life in prison for each murder.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. To this day, he remains incarcerated. He is serving his sentence in the New York State Department of Corrections. Now we're getting into the more spooky haunting part of it. On December 18th, 1975, George and Kathy Lutz purchased the house on Ocean Avenue for $80,000. Just before Christmas, they moved in with Kathy's 3 kids from her previous marriage. The Lutzes would later claim that their dream home quickly turned into a living nightmare. Almost immediately after moving in, the Lutzes claimed they sensed a disturbing otherworldly presence within the house. They reported hearing unexplained noises and witnessing locked windows and doors mysteriously opening and closing on their own. George Lutz, a former Marine, claimed to be haunted by the phantom sounds of a brass band marching through the house.
Oh.
A haunted mansion.
Yeah.
A Catholic priest who had agreed to bless the home was reportedly met with a disembodied voice commanding him to get out. After the aborted exorcism, scratching noises intensified. Demonic figures were reportedly seen lurking outside windows at night. George Lutz appeared to be possessed. A foul green slime was said to ooze from the walls and ceiling, and the family was further terrorized by ghostly apparitions, sudden cold chills, unexplainable personality changes, and objects that mysteriously moved on their own. Kathy Lutz claimed to have been physically assaulted by unseen hands and also reported levitating off of her bed one night.
Imagine waking up to find out you were actually falling.
Oh, I don't think I'd like that. The Lutzes fled the house on 112 Ocean Avenue after just 28 days. They claimed to leave so hastily that they didn't even take their furniture with them and was driven out by the demonic forces that had invaded their home. In February 1976, local residents were shocked to see Channel 5 news crews broadcasting live from the house. The news team captured a seance and dramatic investigation led by Ed and Lorraine Warren, the well-known demonologists. For those unfamiliar with the Warrens, Lorraine claims to be a clairvoyant and a trance medium and was said to have the ability to contact the spirit world. Ed, her husband, was an expert on hauntings and exorcisms. From the 1950s through the 1980s, the Warrens were based in Connecticut and were recognized as authorities when it came to ghosts and demons and hauntings. In 1975, their involvement in the Amityville case caught the nation's attention. February 1976, the Warrens visited the house for the first time. Though George Lutz refused to accompany them, he did loan them a key to get in. The Warrens said they found old newspapers and a stocked fridge, which suggested that the Lutzes had left in a hurry. They conducted a seance with 2 other psychics and reported an unearthly presence. Ed Warren claimed to have experienced heart palpitations, which he blamed on occult forces in the house. The Warrens concluded the house was haunted by the angry spirits of Native Americans who used the land to isolate the insane tribe members until they died.
Oh, my.
They did not bury them there due to the belief that the land was infested by demons. George and Kathy Lutz collaborated with writer Jay Anson to create the book The Amityville Horror based on their experiences. It quickly became a bestseller. This success from the book soon spawned a series of movies and sequels. The Warrens were hired by the producer and served as consultants on the supernatural elements in the film. They also made numerous talk show appearances to share their insights into the events that allegedly happened in the Amityville house. I prefer the newer movie.
I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
The Conjuring, and then of course there's the Amityville Horror movie remake, and then you got the old Amityville Horror.
The Amityville Horror moved past local newspaper articles to captivating audiences worldwide through books, magazines, and television. The story's global spread was driven by the claim of a true story boldly stated on the best-selling book's cover. However, there was skepticism lingering even within the paranormal circles. Questions were raised about the truthfulness of the Lutz's family experience.
A lot of people thought that they just couldn't afford the new high payments on their home and decided to...
That is in here.
Ah.
A paranormal investigator from New York named Dr. Stephen Kaplan was one of those skeptics. Before the Lutzes turned to the Warrens, they had approached Dr. Stephen Kaplan about investigating the house on Ocean Avenue. He received a phone call from Lutz in February 1976 requesting the investigation. When asked about the fee services, he explained that they didn't charge for investigations, but he did warn that if the story turned out to be a hoax, the public would be informed of it.
Fair enough.
Kaplan's offer to investigate was met with a change of heart from Lutz. He called back a few days later to cancel and claimed that he and his wife did not want the publicity. So, of course, Kaplan was surprised when just days later, Channel 5 news crews were broadcasting from the very house he was asked to investigate.
Yeah, it's a little sketchy.
Yeah. He felt suspicious when he pressed for specifics about what the Lutzes had experienced in the house. George claimed he couldn't describe it, but that demons lurked in the house. He said he read a book about demonology and psychic phenomena, the title of which he conveniently forgot.
Is it called Demonology? There's a book called Demonology.
Probably.
I'm pretty sure.
As the Amityville horror story captivated the world, paranormal researcher Kaplan decided to look into the evidence. Though initially convinced of the Lutz's claims, fueled by the house's violent history, something did not sit right with their accounts. His investigation intensified, revealing inconsistencies and raising red flags. He believed this was all a hoax that could be damning for possible real paranormal cases in the future, and he intended to prove that the entire story was a lie.
Good man.
Mm-hmm. His quest to expose the Amityville hoax became an uphill battle with the Warrens and also the general public. The Warrens, deeply invested in the case and the Lutz's story, refused to back down. Despite confessions and the evidence debunking the haunting, the Warrens still stood firm.
Is he the dude that was in the beginning of The Conjuring that called them crazy?
Maybe.
They made him look like such a villain.
The truth, it seemed, was just not as marketable as the thrilling tale of the demons' possession and hauntings, obviously. His documented investigations, later published in book form, struggled to be seen. The public's fascination with the Amityville horror carried on, turning the Ocean Avenue house into a tourist attraction.
Honey, the property values have skyrocketed.
Well, no. The constant visitors and the resulting complaints became so overwhelming that it even drove one of Amityville police chiefs into early retirement. So,
yeah, that house has been nothing but trouble.
Yeah, and apparently the neighbors around it did not enjoy the tourists. That would get irritating. Kaplan uncovered that the Amityville horror was in fact a lie. George Lutz, with the help of DeFeo's lawyer, had come up with the haunting tale as a desperate attempt to secure a new trial for DeFeo.
The devil made me do it.
He wanted to use the devil made me do it defense. Weber further revealed Lutz's motive was to escape a mortgage that he could not afford and his failing business.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. He gathered evidence beyond the confessions that exposed the Amityville horror as a hoax. Repeated visits to the house revealed that the Red Room, a site of alleged demonic ceremonies, was nothing more than a pipe well.
Oh.
That's
so
disappointing.
Yeah, that's just boring.
The demonic face in the fireplace never appeared during the visits. Even the front door, which was said to have been blown off, remained in place on its hinges. And the damage to the windows and other doors from the banging they said that they did randomly, as described in the book, was entirely false. They were fine. All the original hardware from hinges to doorknobs was all still there. He wasn't the only one who was suspicious about the Lutz's story. A local newspaper writer also did some digging. He found that the Lutzes, who claimed to have fled their haunted house in terror, were spotted back at the property the very next day, hosting a garage sale.
The garage was never, implicated in the
The writer also discovered that during their supposed 28-day nightmare, the police were never called to the house. This one I could kind of understand, because if something that is threatening your life is happening, you're likely to pick up the phone and call the police. But also, if it's something that's supernatural, you're going to be like, they're going to think I'm nuts. They're going to send me to the crazy house.
Remember, what was it? The new Poltergeist remake, 2015 or something, 2005. Their daughter got sucked into the TV, and she's like, we need to call the police and tell them the truth or tell them something. And he's like, they'll think we done it, honey. And that's true, they would have, but nobody was injured, so call them. Who cares? Call them and say something weird's going on. That's what happened in The Conjuring 2, wasn't it? The lady did call the police, and the police seen weird things happening and they just left.
Yeah.
Said, we'll back you up, but this is out of our...
What are we supposed to do about it? This is not part of our job description.
So, just call them. If nothing's been done, it might implicate you in a crime. Call them. Why not?
The cloven hoof prints that what they claim to have seen in the snow in the book were said to have been on a day when there was no snowfall. So apparently it magically snowed.
Yeah.
Where only there. Long enough for some cloven hoof prints to show up. And nobody else noticed it.
More like the dull history and hauntings podcast.
The priest in the book was terrorized by a demon while attempting to bless the house, and he was even stalked back to his house. And then he had developed boils, bleeding, and foul odors. The priest who really did bless the house in reality did have a few unsettling experiences that led him to believe in a possibility of haunting. However, neither he nor his home suffered any demonic attacks. And these list of lies just seem to grow and grow. Whole list of lies.
That's the real devil that's in that house. Pathological liars.
Yep.
Maybe they believed it happened. I'll say that.
Yeah. Later, residents Jim and Barbara further debunked the haunting claims. However, they were plagued by the tourists and decided to take legal action against the publishers and the Lutzes. They said the horror, quote, was a fabricated scheme that had disrupted their lives. The lawsuit ended up reaching a settlement with the new residents receiving an undisclosed amount. And there you have it. The not so...
Well, it's horrific.
Horrific. Well, I guess, yeah, it is.
But the last episode's really all the horrific stuff.
Yeah. The Amityville Horror story that started with a horrific event.
Made a good book and a movie.
Like, the true crime part was definitely horrific.
Mm-hmm.
It was made bigger by people wanting more money and continues because, obviously, we love a scary story. And like I said, the newer movie, I really enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
Especially since it's got Ryan Reynolds in it.
Now, if they were on like a street that had businesses nearby, you could sneak by and take a selfie on your way past, but
don't be annoying these people in their home, their place where they're supposed to have peace.
It's like a suburb. There isn't a shop in sight. What are you doing?
No, I agree. They definitely should not have to be putting up with this at all. But there's no way that you didn't know how famous this house was.
Yeah, so if you got it on a bargain, that just means fine.
But you still should not be pestering them.
I bet they don't decorate for Halloween.
Oh, that's sad.
You just can't.
That's the case.
You would just have blasted by the media. Looks like they would have turned it into a bed and breakfast and just profited off of it.
That would have been a good idea. Then they could make the money to live somewhere else.
Yeah.
While still profiting.
Be like signs everywhere. This is actually where things didn't happen here. This is where things didn't happen here.
Yeah, they lied about this one right here, too.
Little plaques everywhere about all the stuff that wasn't messed up.
You know what this was? This was a load of bullshit. That's what it was located here.
But enjoy your stay. If you feel the need to imagine haunting, have at it. Just don't tear up anything in the process
Yeah.
or disturb the other guests, please.
Or our neighbors.
Yeah.
Because apparently the neighbors got irritated with the
I
visitors as
don't
well.
remember what it was. I heard a couple places that are turned into bed and breakfasts don't
Yeah.
want you to record or anything while you're there, which kind of undermines the whole...
Lizzie Borden house, I believe you can.
Yeah, I've heard recordings of people at the Lizzie Borden house. Hysterical History podcast recorded there. We're thinking about doing more trips and stuff. We had so many plans and they all fall through all the time. But I do like to travel, so that is more likely to happen than anything else.
Yeah.
As for the streams I do,
and I have a car that we can actually do that in now.
Yeah.
That won't break down and we'll be stuck.
Yeah, so we've got it worked out. This second episode was informative, if not terribly exciting. I will say that much.
Hey, I never said that all of the hauntings were going to be true. And if it turns out that it's been proven to not be, I'm not going to keep that information from people.
Fair enough. Keep spreading the good word.
I hate seeing something that has obviously been proven false, and then I find this, what I think is going to be an interesting YouTube video or something like that, and they don't mention the part of when it was found out to be false. Obviously, it does make for a good story, but I like the truth.
A lot of true crime things, like documentaries, not documentaries, but true crime series, where each episode will be a different crime, whatever. Sometimes they'll, not podcasts, I haven't noticed it on podcasts, but on videos, they don't add up. Different ones, they'll cut out the part where the reason somebody got murdered is because they were out hooking up with a dude while they were married to a woman. That just got completely cut out. They just got murdered. And they went after the victim. They didn't even mention the fact that he was having a gay affair. I watched these episodes after Christopher and Eric's True Crime TV Club episode. It's a podcast. They mentioned that this happened, and I went and watched it. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, the family wasn't in the one that mentioned the gay stuff. So the family probably pressured them not to do it. Mm-hmm. That makes me doubt every one I watch now. Just a little bit.
That's why I do my best when I'm doing something for the podcast to research, especially if it's a true crime thing. I try to do my best to have multiple sources that I look into.
I had to cut out some about the murderers. I think it was the ABC Alphabet of Death episode a while back. And you said somebody had so many different murders, like 40-some murders. I had to cut that out.
That was in the book, though.
Yeah, well, I had to cut it out because I looked it up and it was false.
Yes, that was false. Was it Kemper?
Yeah, so just be careful. Even if we get things wrong, I know we do.
Yes, and I've mentioned before, if you respectfully let me know, then I will be sure to correct it in a future podcast.
Yeah.
But just please keep it respectful, is all I ask.
I just cut out the number. So if you don't wonder there was not a number where there should be a number, I just cut that out.
See, that's the one thing about the Alphabet of Death, though. I do not do the whole multiple source thing because I have that as I have to get something done quick because I'm working on something bigger that's taken me longer and I need to work on something quick. So that's the one that I don't do multiple sources. I just go from what's in that book.
Yeah. This is like the format we do. We talk about stuff, the basics in the beginning of the podcast. We do our episode and then afterwards, right before we do the outro, we talk about just a little update stuff.
Yeah.
So if you're wondering how this derailed, it's because technically the story's over. But I guess that's it. We don't have anything else to say. The link in the description, it's a Linktree link. It will take you to all of our socials, including a Facebook group I created for HH&H, this podcast. It won't cover all the other Gruesome Gaming Group Podcast Network's podcasts, but it will cover this one. And you can find a lot of updates there. I plan on updating that more often. And we need to get a community built there. That'd be nice.
Mm-hmm. I really like hearing from you all.
Yeah.
I am still working on the Black Sisters case. Like I said, it's more than I realized it was going to be. It's very interesting. I've actually heard back from the person that recommended it, but I am going to wait to read that review until I finish the research and get that podcast out. So I love hearing from you all, and I love getting suggestions. Also, I'm probably going to hold off this month of October on the Alphabet of Death and the other things like that. I'm going to try to keep it ghost and paranormal and supernatural to go with the month.
Spooky.
Yeah.
We are thinking about doing one on the Flatwoods Monster. I want to do one on the Flatwoods Monster.
Yes, I'll work on that one since, like I said, the Black Sisters is going to take me longer. I've had this idea since the hurricane damage in Appalachia, I want to bring more attention to Appalachia, and considering it's October as well at the moment, it'll go on past October. I want to do more episodes or like a little series on Appalachia folklore, Appalachia hauntings, Appalachia cryptids, and little things like that.
Yeah.
And then once October is over, obviously I'll try to go into other disasters that's happened. We already did a Saltville muck disaster episode.
Yeah, we have a bunch. Local communities, we have a few tornadoes. We covered those, but mostly there's flooding, like terrible flooding. Other creepy things that happen sometimes.
Yeah.
If we wanted to get into mine disasters, I'm sure we have plenty.
Yeah. So that will be coming sometime in the near future.
Look forward to that. In the description, there'll be a Linktree link. We're part of the Gruesome Gaming Group podcast network. And in that Linktree link, the first link will be to our website. It'll have all of our different podcasts and episodes. Go to the individual podcasts from there and find out more about them. We have Brother Knows Quest, a podcast where I talk about tabletop role-playing games. We have Horrific History and Hauntings, this one. We have Leveling Duo. It's not as often that it comes out, but when we do play a new video game we like, me and Beth or me and my friend Dakota talk about the new video game we enjoyed in that podcast. Follow the socials, follow the HH&H Facebook group. I left that link in there as well. The X and Threads, all those. If you want to reach out, using those or the emails below the Linktree link is best way to reach out to us. Use any of the emails. There should be 2 emails. They'll both get to us. Let us know what you think. Leave reviews. Thanks for the people who already leave reviews. We do read them. Well, Beth reads most of them. I hear about it from her. There's also a link in the very bottom that will take you to a tip page. You can send us a tip. It uses Stripe, so it's secured, and it's something our podcast hosting site allowed for, and we just set it up. It's there if you want to use it. Appreciate the people who do. Guess that's it. Thank you for listening. I've been Ramey.
And I'm Beth.
This has been HH&H. Bye-bye.